Reiner.
Welcome back to another edition of AI in Finance, where we take the news that is running at a ever-increasing pace in AI, in the world of AI, and distill it down to a couple of stories that matter the most this past month and what they mean to you and us within wealth management to help us do what we do best, which is help to serve families, clients, and help them realize all of their financial dreams. And, this past month, there was many different articles as there was news across AI every single day, but I want to highlight a couple. First, the Pope got into the AI game. I want to discuss that. Then we're going to talk about OpenAI and a decision that they made on something we have talked about with regards to being able to maneuver around your computer screen autonomously and what that means to us going forward. And then we'll talk about what we all know and have known for the past 25 years and why that is starting to change given the recent news from the Google I/O conference. So we will talk about that as well. Let's start with the Pope. Now, the Pope on May 25th, he decided to write out a 42,000 word paper, 5 chapters, all around safeguarding the human person in the time of artificial intelligence. This comes exactly, so there was some thought around this. This comes exactly 135 years to the day after Pope Leo XIII wrote the Rerum Novarum, which is really hard for me to say. It sounds like I'm mumbling, on the rights of workers during the Industrial Revolution. He took to the point of writing something similar during the Industrial Revolution. Why I think that that's so interesting is that we've talked about how the AI wave, the technological advancement that's happening today, is reminiscent to what happened during the Industrial Revolution. And the Pope seems to think so as well. Now, what was interesting was that he had a co-founder of Anthropic with him as he presented this document and this paper and this writing. And the Christopher Olah, who's a co-founder of Anthropic being the company behind Claude, if you've used Claude before, which is similar to ChatGPT, it's a competitor. Now, the reason I say that that's interesting is not that he is an AI. That's not the interesting part. Is Olah is an atheist. He actually doesn't believe in religion. And so this doesn't come back at a thing about religion. If you look at the core premise of the document from the Pope is that he talks about how technology is never neutral. It takes on the character of those who design, finance, regulate, and use it. And I think that that's really a fine point in that his warning, which is a warning that has been stated by many others, but the Pope is an elevated figure, and so it is focused on a lot more. His main warning being that AI's development is controlled right now by a small number of private transnational companies that already exceed the capacity of many governments. And his call is saying robust legal frameworks, independent oversight, and informed users. And I think that, he goes on, it's an interesting paper if you want to take it, maybe you take it and put it through AI to get some of the tidbits of it. But he talks about data ownership. He talks about using AI in warfare. He talks about the fear that AI is going to make people feel like cogs in an efficiency machine, and humans may begin to see themselves as problems to be optimized. And he does compare AI to the Industrial Revolution. So it's nothing that's like groundbreakingly new. It's just that there is a figure that is seen and respected amongst a large contingencies of humans across the globe that has gone away from what his main focus is to talk about something that he is now bringing into his purview of a focus. And, I think about this conversation and technology is that there is this, technology is always a pendulum where it does good and then it swings over to the good, turns into bad, and you're always trying to find this equilibrium. And I think that there is no, perfect equilibrium. And so I think that leads into what this means for us in wealth management is that we are all looking for the right moment to start introducing more AI. And as we all know in our industry, just as it is with like trading and investing and everything of that nature, there is no perfect moment. There is a hindsight 2020, but there is no perfect moment of when to get started, when to incorporate, when to start making changes to the way that we work based on the new information, technology, et cetera, that we have in place today. And I'll tell you that whenever we adopt it, if you're waiting for the next shoe to fall or for that aha, I told you moment, you will find it. But we just don't know when that will be. And that is a natural progression of a new innovation trying to find equilibrium. And that's where we're at right now, is we're trying to find this equilibrium. We've had some exposure to the negative, which gets a lot of people to say that is what I mean. That's why I'm not adopting it. But we've also seen an extreme amount of positive come from this innovation as well. And what I take from this conversation is that AI is not only here to stay, it is the next wave. It is, the Pope talking about AI kind of puts the rubber stamp on those conversations of saying, like, should we use it? Should we not? I don't think that question is a question anymore. It's been answered. We should be using it and we should be aware of what it means. And I, whether we understand what, is in the Pope's documents or not, I know that there are clients that we serve that probably have read it. And so having the conversation with them, I think that's going to be a theme throughout today's episode, is having a conversation around AI with our clients. And that is, what this is all about, this story. And so what can we do as an advisor to help based off of this story? Well, let's rubber stamp AI. It is the future of how we work. And so if we aren't using it, or we're just using it a little bit, I would suggest that we continue to try to adopt it a little bit more each day or each week. Advance your AI abilities every week, because if not, then we get to the point, where it's kind of like where my parents were when technology came out, like using a computer. My grandmother, I remember my grandmother when she used a computer for the first time. I took it over and she was trying to move her body with the mouse, and she ultimately moved the mouse to the computer off of the table, and she couldn't figure out how to use that technology, and she just gave up on it. And that led to her missing out on the ability to more effectively and more regularly communicate with her family over in Israel. And she lost that opportunity because she didn't invest time and energy and effort early enough in the cycle of technology. And if we don't do that, that's where we're going to be. So every day, or every week, try one new thing within AI that you haven't done. I think that the second major point of what we can do is start to have conversations with our clients. Be proactive about it. Tell them how you view AI, how you think about your using AI, how you are using it, how you want to use it, and bring them into the conversation of how they are using it, because I'm sure you will learn a lot from how they are using it. And this seems so simple, but it is so powerful, is that if we can get ahead of the conversation, we then can create the platform, the environment, and the safety net to allow for our clients to understand and get comfortable with AI, which allows us to as well. So let's move on to the second story. The second story is around OpenAI. I haven't talked about OpenAI, which is the founder of ChatGPT, really kind of the company that got AI onto the scene with its first launch of ChatGPT. I haven't talked about OpenAI in a long time because I used to be a firm ChatGPT OpenAI person, but I have transitioned over to being a Claude user. And so I spent a lot of time talking about Anthropic and Claude in the past, but OpenAI continues to make a lot of headlines. Not only have they announced recently that they plan to go public with an IPO here soon this year, but they made two moves in the past 30 days that I don't know were connected. And the one move is that they continue to advance the ability to autonomously control computers. They had the ability to do it on Apple's or Mac computers, but now they can do it on Windows computers. That means that the computer can be autonomously controlled by AI with the clicking and opening and organizing and everything of that nature, which has been a prevalent trend, which we'll talk about. But then secondly, Sam Altman, the founder and CEO of OpenAI, he talked about how he's hiring engineers to build physical robots. I'm going to just say this. I spent a lot of time out in San Jose at the NVIDIA conference earlier this year, and robots is the next big thing with regards to AI. Now that you have the intelligence, you now have the energy and the power of these chips. Having physical robots, it's already been a thing. Like Amazon has been having robots inside of their, warehouses for some time, but now getting even more, humanoid robots. That is the next iteration. And we can say, well, what are they going to do? Like, what does it mean? Like, is it Terminator? I don't know, but that is where a lot of time, money, and effort is going. And you can see that these leading AI companies are investing in it as well, because those tends to be indications of where things are going as AI as we know it, Gen AI, agentic AI. Agentic AI is still going, but as it starts to plateau, these companies need to look for the next thing, and robotics is the next thing. Going back to what this idea of autonomously running computers means is, we talked about it, right? The Claude has something called Cowork that can do the same thing. Perplexity has something called Computer that can do the same thing. And now OpenAI has it. And I think that it was really something that like freaks a lot of people out. And I remember when I talked about this in a past episode, it was a moment where I got some responses where it freaked people out. And I get it. It freaked me out too. But what you're starting to see is that now we're starting to move away from that freak out moment to it's like just there and it's been done already, and people get more comfortable with it. And I think that this idea of using AI to manage and click through computers is going to become more and more commonplace as we start to rethink how we work in a world of AI. And we think about security, we think about confidentiality, everything of that nature. I think that there's some opportunities there. And then you pair that with this investment in robotics, and you start to see that, if you think about if you can control a computer autonomously, then you can control the computer inside of a robot autonomously more than just chips. And you can start to control and navigate how it walks, what it does, everything of that nature. And that advances some of the deficiencies that robotics have as well. And so I think that you say, well, Matt, this seems like really out there. So what does it mean for us as an industry? Well, I think that what it means for us as an industry is that AI, and I'm not going. This isn't breaking news or headline news here. AI is moving really, really fast, and I think that we have to figure out how to stay informed of what's going on, not necessarily to act on it, but to know where the trend is going. Because if not, we're always constantly going to be behind the trend. And what's happening with robotics is really interesting, because I think as you start to see these new models, these new AI models come out, like Opus 4.8 or the new OpenAI model, and you start to see how much better they are relative to the former models, that advancement is starting to narrow. And it's becoming just less and less, which means that you're going to start to get to a point where every new AI model is basically just like slightly better. It's like an upgrade to your computer, like a new OS on your phone, where you don't really notice it. And we're going to start to get to that point. And so for us within wealth management, these models are really, really good. So we should be using them. But we also have to think about what else is going to be happening because of AI. We got to start thinking about how that impacts how we work, what we do, and how we do it within our organization. And so I think that this is what does it mean for us in wealth management? Well, it means that the idea of robots potentially greeting people in our hallways seems crazy, scary. Like, Matt, shush, like, don't talk anymore. Like, you're freaking me out. And I'm just saying, the more that you start to understand it, the more comfortable you will get with it, so that the change when it happens isn't as great or robust or as much of a slap across the face. And so that's what we need to understand, is that this is moving faster than just generative AI, agentic AI, and it's moving into robots. And I don't know what the next thing is, but we need to be aware of it. And I think that what we can do as an industry and as a firm, and this is something that we're doing inside of our own firm, is, what can we do with this? And I challenge and look at how we work all the time. And if we don't have, as an organization, an ability to have a team or a group of people that are focused on the exploit, which I talk about a lot, the exploit, doing business today, and in a team and a group of people focused on the explore, how we do business tomorrow, 3, 5, 10 years in the future. If we don't have that set up in our organization, then we are going to be way behind over the next 3, 5, and 10 years. And so I'm only going to give one action item on this one is if you're a small firm, maybe sub 10 individuals, find 2 or 3 individuals that are willing to spend 10 to 20% of their time inside of Explore without ruining the exploit, which is doing the work that we are doing today. And set a goal for them. Rethink one aspect of our business. Explore it, understand it, learn about it, figure out a way to implement it. Find 3 people inside the business. If you're a larger organization, find a group that meets monthly, or you can start to hire for people. That's what we've done, but we're a little bit bigger. Find a way within your organization to balance the ability of doing what you're doing today, which is exploit, while looking what you need to do tomorrow, which is explore. All right, final story. So Google is changing. I'll just leave it at that. Google is changing their I/O conference. That's their annual conference where they announce a lot of things. They announced that they are fundamentally changing how Google search actually works. They're not tweaking it. They're rebuilding it around AI agents. And I recently just saw some news that they're also raising a lot of money to continue to invest in their AI infrastructure and their AI ambitions. And so what's happened now is that they're using their Gemini AI model, which Gemini 3.5, it's just like iOS 16.1.2, similar things, is now the default AI model that powers search for everyone. And the search box, which we all know so well, is going to start to evolve and change and be redesigned. It's going to expand as you type. It's going to anticipate your intent. There's going to be AI suggestions beyond autocomplete. And they're creating this infrastructure where there's like this AI mode where these background information agents are going to be running 24/7, monitoring news, blogs, social posts, financial data, sports, everything on topics that you specify. They have a new ultra tier. They're doing generative UI, which search builds custom visual tools, simulations, and dashboards on the fly. I mean, Google is investing heavily into AI. They have started to really assert themselves as an AI leader. You know, I think that what this means for us within wealth management is I still go to Google, right? I have access to Anthropic and Claude. I have access to Perplexity. I have access to ChatGPT, but I still go to Google for certain things. And I think that that's the lesson that we need to take from this announcement is that there is no one path anymore of what we do. And just because we have the tools of AI doesn't mean that we aren't going to use the tools that we had in the past because they are evolving. And I think that what I've taken away from this is I've started to get the realization how I still use Google, even though I'm such a big fan of Anthropic, is that my mind is starting to be trained on what tool to go to for what type of information. I don't have to think about it anymore. And it shows how our minds can evolve the way that we work. I think that's really interesting because I don't think like, should I go to Claude on this? Should I go to Google on this? Like, that's not the question. It's like I have this natural tendency to go to Google for a quick search and I go to Claude for more thoughtful things, but I'm not like thinking about it. And the reason that came was because I just allowed myself to have access to the tools and I engaged with both of the tools deeply. I've already engaged. I have 25 years of experience with Google, so I had that. And the answers that they provide me, I only use the AI answers. But with Claude, I had to engage with that deeply. And now I've trained and rewired my mind of how I work. And that's the lesson that we need to learn, is that if we don't dedicate the time, effort, and ability, then we're constantly going to be in this frustrating middle ground of trying to determine where do I go. But if you start using the tools deeply and with intentionality, then you're going to start to understand what the tools are for, and you're going to rewire your brain to where it just becomes automatic habit. That's how the world works. That's how kids grow. That's how we grow. That's how young employees grow, is you got to delve into it and then you rewire your brain. And that's what this really means, is that, you know, despite all the headlines, the tools of yesterday are not going away. The way that we rewired our brain still can work in an AI world, but we are now adding more tools to our toolbox to enable us to go deeper in different areas for different situations that we may have. And so I think for what this means, what action I would take for you all is I would go and explore some of these new things that Google has. If you haven't used the Google Research or Notebook LM tools or any of the Gemini tools within Google, go use them. They're actually really good. And you'll start to see how different AI tools can be helpful for you in different worlds. And I would then also be intentional with a tool, an AI tool at a time. So go and spend time with Google Gemini for like 3 weeks and just use it. Get frustrated with it, better understand it, and then go use Claude for 3 weeks. And then maybe go back to regular Google for 3 weeks. And you'll start to find and see what you like about all of them. And you'll start to figure out the differences in the different AIs and how they can be beneficial to you. I would just share this. I share this with my team all the time, that the only way for us to evolve in this world, there's going to be no book to tell us. There's going to be no class to power us. There's going to be nobody to do it for us. The only way for us to ensure that we stay relevant in the transition that the Pope has now talked about, that governments have now talked about, is to intentionally insert ourselves into working with these tools. And I think that's the major takeaway from the Google story. So that's 3 stories. The Pope has gotten into the AI conversation. OpenAI is now making computer autonomous navigation more normal. And then Google is changing the way that we search. That's been a 25-year-old trend, showing that something that has been so successful is also open to change. And maybe that's the takeaway for this week, is we have been successful as wealth managers and financial advisors for decades upon decades. But if Google, who has been uberly successful, is willing to change something that made them the business that they are, maybe we should look at figuring out how we can change how we work in this new technological industrial revolution. With that, stay well, be well, keep on exploring.